Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Depending on when you're watching this particular Cisco IT Essentials, Information Technology Essentials course, version 7, that's the latest edition. This is November 2021. Okay, we've gone through module 1 to 11, so this is module or chapter 12. Here we're going to be looking at some basics, mobile, Linux, and Mac operating systems. For mobile, what are the different operating systems we have for Linux, for Macintosh? It's a very straightforward module. So these are pre-course materials. Okay, what do we want to learn? Explain the purpose and characteristics of mobile operating systems, right? So the kind of operating system which you have for mobile devices is different from what you have in your desktop kind of devices. So we want to understand their characteristics, especially for the two major brands, Android from Google, iOS from Apple. The features, what they can do, and we also want to look at securing. How do we secure our mobile app? Explain how to configure the various types of password locks. You can have several types of passcode. It can be finger pattern, it can be fingerprint, it can be passcode, it can be facial recognition, it can be several others. Then we'll also look at the Linux and Mac operating systems. Then we'll look at how do we troubleshoot most of these operating systems if they have issues. Okay, for the Android, when you say open source, that's to say that the source code is uh anybody, just like the word says, is open. Anybody can actually make changes to it and can create his or own variant of that particular operating system. So it's free. Whereas for a closed source operating system, its premium is paid. You cannot tamper with, you cannot change it. That's why you see the operating system on Android phones, for instance, for Samsung, for LG, for uh, different brands, different hardware companies, is slightly different. They normally adapt it like how they want to present the Android application for their mobile phones. Whereas for the Apple, which is closed, it's proprietary to just Apple device. So, like desktops and laptops, mobile devices use an operating system to run software. So, without an operating system, all of your system applications like Word, Excel, your browsers, your Skype software, your writing software, all of your productivity software, they cannot work without that operating system. So, the operating system is the bridge between your system applications or software and your hardware. Now, before users can analyze and modify software, they must be able to see the source code. So when a developer chooses to provide the source code, the software is to be open source. Like if you go to GitHub, it's a repository for several types of application. So you have most open source projects there. So, but if it is not published, then you say it is closed source. So Android is an example of a closed of an open source project where an iOS is developed by uh, Apple, which is also closed. So Android is owned by Google, like I said, and iOS is owned by Apple. Now, application and content sources. Now, the different applications are written and compiled by specific mobile operating systems such as Apple, Android, or Windows. But this Windows for mobile is not so common again, right? As at this is 2021, as at 4 5 years ago, when or six, when uh, Microsoft acquired Windows, you still can still have some Windows mobile phones here and there, but with time they lost traction in terms of sales, in terms of marketability, in terms of user acceptance. So the two major brands are iOS and Android, and they will normally have their store, like you call the Play Store for iOS and the Apple Store, where you could go to download content. You could go download your applications. So this is what we call the home screen, your Android. You can have the dock. You can have the navigation icons. So with this, you could navigate left, right. Then you have your home screen indicator. You could tap on this button, and it will load up all of the applications for you. Most of us are used to most of these devices because that's what we use every now and then. Okay. Same thing for the iOS. I think GPS, for instance, if you are to move from point A to point B, you will need to use a you need to activate or turn on your GPS. So you just go to settings, go to location, tap or toggle and turn on the service. Because if you don't activate the GPS, it's not able to calculate distance, right? Position from point A to point B, especially if you are driving or you want to locate or know how much distance you have between 2 points on the Earth surface. Wi-Fi calling, yes. Now, instead of using a cellular carrier network, modern smartphone can use the internet to transport voice call, right? So when you're on Wi-Fi, you could make calls through that, or you could use uh, this for iOS, or you could use your internet to make your calls over a particular software, right? There are several applications, proprietary applications, even your basic WhatsApp application you could use to make a call over Wi-Fi. Now, most messaging apps or messaging softwares can still be able to help you to make calls, right? Aside from what is possible on your Android or your iOS. NFC, near field communication, that is what it's called. It's a very nice technology. Most ATM cards have this. So you just need to put the card near close to the chip, and that chip, what it does is that it saves information with regards either somebody's name, payment details, or somebody's ID. And this can be used for access control. This can be used for ID card. This can be used for payment. So NFC is especially apps like Samsung, Huawei. They even have this NFC uh, uh, within the hardware because not all mobile phones have these features. Of course, virtual private network. Why you need a virtual private network most of the times is when you want to anonymize. If you need to anonymize, if you need to uh, connect through to a remote site, there are two types actually. You have point to point or over the internet. So for point to point is an example where you have a network in a particular location A, you have another network in location B. Cisco devices can do that. So you have what they call VPN routers. So the both routers can be configured so that a staff in a remote in a remote area or somebody from another office can be able to connect into the network of his office. Say if there are some applications that you have that somebody have to be within the organization to use. It's like an intranet. It's within the network, right? So they don't want to host it on the cloud or on the internet because of security issues. So for you to connect into that network, you could use a VPN. Then you have the the software based VPN applications that can help you remotely connect through to the internet, which mostly acts like anonymizers or to help you for privacy. So these are some of the steps for you to things like hide my ass, things like open secure VPN and several others. Okay, so how do we secure pass locks? I failed attempts. I could remember there was a particular time that I locked my screen. There are several hacks to this, right? So, uh, most of the times, each of depending on the device, whether it's iOS, whether it's Android, it will tell you how many times it can lock before the screen, how many times you can attempt before it can lock, and it will let you know whether you can restore it through your iCloud account or for Android Gmail account. And don't forget, you could do remote backup also. Yes, we have what they call the locator applications, right? iOS have it, Gmail have it. I love the one for both of them are very nice. Like for iOS, they call it Find My iPhone, Find My iPhone app. For Android, they call it Find My Device. So you could actually ring it, you could locate it, you could even erase data, and you could actually block the device, right? These are cloud features that you should understand when it comes to your mobile phone. Yes, you can also have for iOS, for instance, you have remote lock. So that two of the most common remote security features. So for all the most of the operating systems, you have this feature. So familiarize yourself with it. You lose a phone, provided you still have access to your Gmail, or provided you still have access to your iCloud account. If you lose access to your iCloud account, which was configured on that mobile device, understand that you cannot perform this feature. That's why it is called cloud. So for that iOS account that you have or that Apple phone, you must make sure that that account is still signed in. If it's still signed in, then you can log into the security features on your laptop and you can now start saying you want to play sound, you want to put on lost mode, or you want to erase the iPhone. So that someone does not pick up your device and start uh, uh, doing forensic and getting information off it. Same thing for Android, right? You could still do the same thing. Antivirus, Southtech, uh, partner for AVG. So if you needed 1,000 license for AVG, we could supply it, OEM licenses. So you want to protect your PCs, you want to protect also your mobile phone. So one way you can do that is by using antivirus softwares. Routing and jailbreaking. Most of the times, by default, when you say routing or jailbreaking, it's just a simple setting you have on your mobile phone that you switch off to allow your mobile phone to accept any kind of application without prompting you, which is bad. That's what you call routing. So if you just go to your settings, you could see how to allow that particular feature, especially when you are doing some testing or you develop, like for instance, for us mobile app developers, most of the times when we are developing a mobile app, before we push it to either of the download stores, we'll have to first test the software within 1 month, 2 months, as we're doing a piecemeal development. So if you don't root the device, it will not allow you to install that software. But hackers can use this for devices that are not that have been rooted or that have been jailbreaked or jailbroken. So you want to make sure that even if you turn on this feature, you switch it off, because you make your uh, Android phone or iOS phone very, very susceptible to an attack. Okay, patching, updating your application. So now we're going to look at Linux and Mac operating systems. So these are two operating systems. If you compare in terms of coverage, in terms of usage, so you can give it to Android, the Windows, but Windows have actually not been successful when it comes to mobile devices, right? So the next can should be Mac. Then of course Linux. Very few devices, routers, some switches, some little devices, end devices that run the Linux operating system. So Unix, Linux, Mac operating system. So Unix is proprietary operating system written in C programming language, whereas for Linux, like I said earlier on, embedded systems, some nice watches, cell phones, netbooks, PC servers, supercomputers, most of them use the Linux operating system. Then of course Macintosh is from the Unix kernel, but it's a closed operating system, right? Okay, so earlier on we talked about the Linux and Mac operating system. I have a downpour here, so you just try and uh, cope with the audio. So Overview of the Linux GUI. So this is how it looks like. Most of us that use the Kali Linux, for instance, operating system, or Ubuntu, or whichever of the distribution, it's going to come in this kind of format, right? Very, very similar. Most of the Linux distributions. Okay, this is how you have the Mac. So the Linux are the Mac because the Mac is based off of Unix. Same thing with the Linux. That's why you could do comparison this way. So you have the kernel, then you have the shell, then you have other applications running. Okay, overview of the Mac operating system. So this is what your command line looks like. Very similar to what it looks like when you're on the Linux environment. And most of them have backup utility. For the Mac, you could backup. Same thing with Dix utility. Don't forget when we talked about some of this utility in Windows, the different operating systems they also have Dix utilities for it to either format, to mount, to unmount, or to even maybe partition. They have all of these features. Okay, maintenance, operating system updates. We want to be very careful when it comes to firmware updates, right? Because if something goes wrong, uh, you might get to that system is never going to boot up, or that mobile app is never going to boot up again. So also the same thing with antivirus and anti-malware. I think I've explained how these things happen. They are normally released every day. So it's not just enough for you to have an antivirus or anti-malware. You need to update frequently. Security, some of the commands for basic CLI commands. These are permissions. When you say RW, that's read write, copy, read. These are permissions. This is link user, group, file size, date and time, and file name. Right. So if you type most of these things, this is what you get. Okay, basic Unix file and directory permission. Right. So when you say x dash dash x, what do you mean? When you say r dash dash, what do you mean? Read only. Like most operating system, most of them are also used not just for personal use. Most of these operating systems are also used in servers, are used in hosting. For instance, when you buy a website, most websites they because Linux is free, is open source. So to buy a Linux hosting is very cheap, it's very affordable. But to buy a Windows hosting account, it's a little bit expensive because the Windows operating system is a paid operating system, whereas the Linux operating system is free, right? It's open source. So if you do hosting, if you go to your file cPanel, go to your file manager, right click, check up any of your folder, check on permission, you see these kind of things, right? Okay. Linux administrative commands, you should be aware of some of these things. When you say password, yeah, if you just go to your command and type passwd, it will prompt you to change your password. If you say ps, allows you to monitor your own process. If you're trying to kill a process. If you say ifconfig, it will tell you the different hardware in terms of ethernet and wireless you have, adapters you have on your system. It will tell you their mac address, tell you if they are connected or and the rest. Very synonymous with the ip config in your Windows operating system. You just go to your command prompt and type ipconfig for Windows, but for Mac it is ifconfig. Same thing for Linux. iwconfig, that's for wireless setting. Then chmod is your change permission for that particular file that you own. Okay, see this in action. Super user do. So most of the times there are some commands. For instance, for some of us that are doing the forensic course, if you use a software like Autopsy, Autopsy is a very nice software for forensic. If you configure Autopsy in your Linux environment like Kali, normally you access it by using local hosts. I think dot 999 slash I think autopsy. If you try that on your browser after you've run the command, it might not load up. So you might need to say sudo autopsy. So that way you are saying I want full root access, administrative access. So this is synonymous to the administrative run with administrative permission in Windows, right? Okay, so troubleshooting, we see this section of our modules every now and then. For all of the modules we've considered, the question is that for anything when it comes to tech, you must understand how to troubleshoot. And don't forget, several problems you are going to face, they are typically not new. Somebody have faced that problem and have documented somewhere online, or the manufacturer for that particular hardware or that particular software have put that problem online, and you just need to identify what your problem is and put it in a very short sentence online on Google, and most likely you're going to see a possible solution for that. Of course, you could follow this methodology by establishing a theory. Look at, after your research, look at what might be the probable cause. Then, of course, you test that, you establish a plan, you take action, and of course, you document your findings. So, this is what we've been looking at in most of the modules, right? So, but for each of the modules, depending on what you're considering, whether you're considering network, whether you're considering mobile apps, phones, whether you're considering system configuration, it's going to be slightly different. But I want you to always come back here and study this troubleshooting section very, very well. Okay, we looked at the purpose of mobile devices, how do we secure them, and some of the purpose and characteristics of the different operating systems, and how to troubleshoot. How to troubleshoot, like I said, you see this section. For instance, let us look at this one. The mobile device has weak signal, or the signal has been dropped. Okay, what might be the probable cause? The building that you are in is blocking the signal. So what do you do? Relocate to a different area in the building. For instance, Wi-Fi connection. You have weak signal. You cannot download your files. You cannot load your pages. You cannot do your video conferencing. So you have several types of problems and what might be their possible solutions. Same thing with all of these problems. For every problem you have, there's going to be a likely solution to that. Okay, that's the end of module 12. Thank you very much. See you in module 13.